Coming up on the Middle Class VO podcast.
We need to know each other. We need to meet other people. It means that you're going to find out how somebody else does something, somebody else who has a similar problem and has come up with a different answer for how to solve it. It's somebody referring you for a job, not all the time, but every once in a while someone says, you know what, someone was looking for this kind of voice and I thought of you.
Well, if you need e-learning, we're just an email away. Call up and listen, tell us what to say. Explain the video, image and radio. Slanging local cars, reading IBRs. No, it ain't no stars. No, we're the Middle Class VO podcast. The Middle Class VO podcast.
Here we are, Middle Class VO podcast. And we have, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, the legendary GW3 George Washington III.
Jeez, legendary. My goodness. Y'all got the hype train rolling.
You're my age, so.
Hey, does everybody always say the third at the end, or do you correct them if they don't?
Well, I see. Here's the thing. That's like my actual legal name. And because my dad was George Washington Jr., it really made a difference. I had to do that, because people, is it George Washington, George Jr., George III, or, so got to be the third. That's the whole reason it's there.
It's very memorable.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
Let me give you a proper introduction, George. So we're here with George Washington III. Don't call him Junior. And George is a fantastic voice actor. He's a coach. He is an ambassador of the business. I could go on, but let's let George tell it himself. George, tell us about yourself and what you're doing in VO right now and how you got into this crazy business we're all in.
Okay, so I was originally an IT, and I worked for one of the big banks. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. I worked for First Union, and while I was working for First Union, they asked me to do some on-camera work, internal, so I was hosting videos inside the bank. And at one of them, they asked me to go to a local studio and record some of the voiceover for it, some of the narration. Mm-hmm. And while I was at the studio, I said, hey, this would be a cool thing to do, like all the time. And the studio said, yeah, just bring us some scripts and we'll make your demos for you for $350. $350. When was the last time you got a demo done for $350?
Are you kidding me?
By a guy named Slippery Pete last week.
Exactly, right? So that was in 2003. And made the demos and slowly made my way through, getting from just doing a very small number of locations local to Charlotte and then a couple others in North Carolina and Florida to, getting more and more work based on those demos. And I kept those demos for a long time. Let me tell you.
Sure.
That was, I probably didn't change out demos for 10 years.
Wow. You got that ROI.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right. I wrung every bit of usefulness out of those demos. But so I've continued to do it on the side for a long time. Last few years, I've been able to just say, this is all I do. And it has been good ever since. And, this is, as a matter of fact, like I'm in the middle of the best year I've ever had. And I will take that every time.
Congratulations.
Oh, that's great.
There you go.
Yeah. What is your biggest genre?
Oh, the last couple of years, Bobby, it has been e-learning and business narration by far. Not even close to anything else.
Well, let's kind of set up like the theme or the topic, of today's show, the podcast today with George. And it's all about George. I was fascinated by all the little tricks and apps and technology and resources that you use to aid in voiceover work. So Bobby and I got together, we put our heads together, and we thought that'd be kind of a cool area to discuss, like all these things that are available to us, whether it's a personal resource, training, or it's an app, technology. It can all be useful in our business. Right, Bobby and George?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. I have used a lot of them over the years, just trying to find ways to make things easier for me, simpler for me, down to, for instance, when you're working, multiple jobs and trying to do voiceover, the thing that got on my nerves was missing auditions, right? Not seeing them in my email because, stuff's coming in, that one happens to get by you. Well, I started using a tool called Zapier, and what it does is it goes through my email and it finds things that say audition in them, and it puts them in an Evernote document and on my to-do list. And so when I look at the to-do list, there's where the auditions go, and I can just say, oh, let me go get that one, do that one, mark it off as done.
What's it called? Zapier?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Spell that.
It's Zapier.
Zapier. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's basically, it uses what they call zaps to run processes against various applications. So Gmail, Evernote, it can connect with a whole lot of applications. And I found it to be pretty indispensable. That way it's like that stuff doesn't get by me. I have to do some refining to it, of course, because some things when you get an audition doesn't say audition in the line, right, in the
right.
title. And so you have to do a little more digging around to get it, and sometimes it's going to catch things that aren't. So if you get a newsletter that talks about doing better auditions, it may show up in your to-do list. But those are a lot fewer than the auditions you are not going to miss because they keep showing up in your to-do list.
Wow. And you're on Calendly, right?
Yes, I
Do you
use
use that a lot?
Calendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is. I put a Calendly link in my email footer. It will be on my redesigned webpage and all that for people to say, hey, if you want to meet, just click there. It'll show you what my calendar is like, and you can pick a time. That guarantees that if it's open for you, it's open for me. And it just puts it in. It lets me know that there's a new event put on my calendar, and they have an opportunity to put information in and tell me what they want to talk about. And I can put in a Zoom link, a Google Meet link, whatever's necessary to make it happen. So that is a great tool that I use as well.
Well, do you use that like if you're on pay to play in your submission form? Can you put that in there as well?
You could, but I don't use pay to plays. So, yeah, I have
That's a
not
good problem
used
to have.
pay to play. Yeah, right. But yeah, you could put as long as it'll accept a hyperlink, you can put the hyperlink in there and say schedule it based on your time. Some people, you got to be careful with it. Of course, you don't want to delegate your calendar to someone else, right? There's, people don't always, and people sometimes don't appreciate it when you say, hey, pick a time. But in a lot of instances, it just makes things a lot faster and easier to say, hey, they say, when are you open? I'm like, well, I've got a lot on my calendar. So you find a time that fits with what's on my calendar and we can go. And most people are fine with that.
Let's go back. George, why? Tell us why. Give us the dirty truth why you might not be involved in casting sites.
I decided at one point that it was, to be honest, I did Voice 123 for a long time. And
yeah, that's how you and I connected, I believe.
Yeah, it is. And as a matter of fact, one of the longest running and best paying jobs I ever had, I got from Voice 123. I was the voice of a sports network for 6 years.
Nice.
From a Voice 123 casting. But I also, in the time when it was going on, when I was still doing I'm in between doing this and doing other work, as the prices went up, to keep getting the certain kinds of and certain levels of auditions, I decided that I'm just going to rely more on the people that I can reach out to and talk to. And so far, it has borne out. Now, I have thought a couple of times, I might want to drop back in, see how it goes since I have the ability to do it now. But there's nothing that's driving me to say, you must get those, because I get plenty of audition opportunities from people that I already work with. I get plenty of opportunities from agents. I think I'm in a pretty good place. So I may consider doing it again, but it isn't something I'm rushing to do.
Using the resources to your advantage.
Yes.
So you're on social media, I would imagine, right? I mean,
Yes.
I'm talking about all the big VO ones, not just Facebook,
Yes.
but LinkedIn and Instagram. Do you get hired on social media?
Occasionally. Social media, I have not found that I'm going to generate a significant portion of my work from social media. One of the problems that I've seen with a lot of voice actors in social media, it's not a problem per se, but it's knowing who you are addressing, is so many people are putting out content that is reaching out to you and I, right? How much do we need from them? Not that I don't enjoy seeing what other people are doing and how they're doing things, but that's not going to generate work for me to show other people, this kind of information. I like to share information with people. Obviously, if I didn't, I wouldn't be here, right? But I also don't know that it's of huge, value to say over and over, this is how I edit things. This is how I, create things. So what I've chosen to do with a lot of my social media is be honest about who I am and what I believe in. And if there's a reason that we don't work, and that reason is because you don't like what I believe in, then we probably didn't need to work in the first place.
Yeah.
And George, you were telling me the other day about, going back to the resources topic and angle of the whole podcast here today, using everything that we can to our voiceover advantage. You were telling me about this new app that sounds so cool that would benefit long-form narrators, especially audiobook narrators. Tell me about that again.
Yes. I was given a presentation by a gentleman at a company called Positron. It's Pozotron. And with Positron, you record your audio in your DAW just like you normally would. You upload your script and the file that you have recorded to Positron, and it goes through and checks to see if your words match what's written in the script.
Wow.
And it is amazing, and especially, this when you're doing long form or you're doing e-learning, there are times where we substitute words and simply don't know we did it. Right?
Yep, all the time.
It just happens, and we had no idea that that's what happened. So what this does is it'll go through and say, yeah, you substituted this for this. And you can mark it as, yeah, that's a pickup, and you click the button that says that's a pickup. And when you finish, it can generate a report that says, here's where all the pickups are with timestamps, with the lines around it, highlighting the thing you made a mistake on. It comes in an Excel spreadsheet, and you just go through and make the fixes.
Wow.
Is this a free app?
It is not free. It costs $10 for every finished hour if you are doing, if you're doing it as a pay-as-you-go kind of way. But they have subscription plans for audiobook people where, they get a certain amount of hours each month, and then it's X over that. So I found it to be really amazing. It really is wonderful for long form.
Yeah, for long-form narrators, especially audiobook narrators, I could imagine it being invaluable.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Oh, yeah. And, when you are looking at the mistakes, it'll tell you, is this pause too long? Where, if it's over 2 seconds, it's like,
Wow.
Did you mean for that to be there?
And you're like, don't you judge me!
You're judging me. Stop judging me. I know what I am as an artist. But
George, you mispronounced this word.
Damn it.
Getting catty on us.
Posotron,
You screwed
right?
this up. Yes. And one of the it does say in the discussion, it says, of course, it can't make artistic judgments for you. It can't tell you, that your stress was wrong here or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you are looking at, you're looking at a long narration and you just need to say, here's where I made mistakes. This does it, and relatively quickly. I've been doing some narration, but not very long in the last week or so, just trying it with this, and it's wonderful. I mean, and I haven't even downloaded the reports. I just go against, here are the results that it shows you on the screen, and not generated the report itself, just gone and fixed it immediately, and it was done.
That's Gab-worthy.
Wow. That's amazing. Got a little tease here. We're going to get George on a cold read challenge here in just a couple of minutes. I've got it all set up. Bobby and I planned this out. And George, we're going to get you on a cold read challenge. We're going to see if you're up to it coming up in just a couple of minutes. But getting back to the resources topic and angle of our conversation today, I know Bobby was talking about, George, when we were talking about you behind your back, it was all good. But Bobby was talking about some of the some skill set resources that you might have. Bobby, why don't you talk to him about that? Ask him about that.
Well, yeah, I see you post on Facebook occasionally about you actually sing or you'll do poetry on the Facebook. And I'm assuming that this is, we know you have a singing background because we've heard you. But the poetry thing, how does that benefit? Do you see many auditions where you have to use your voice in a singing way, or like slam poetry seems to be, a big thing now in auditions? Is it been beneficial to you?
So I have done a small handful of singing work for commercials. My favorite was I did one for Fruit by the Foot. On Spotify a couple of years ago. The audition came in and the person who contacted me said, how long can you hold a note? And I said, how long do you need me to hold a note? And they said, well, why don't you just send us one? Hold it as long as you can. And so I sent one, and it was probably 15 seconds, and they said, yeah, it won't have to be that long. This is what we're going to have you do. You're just going to say Fruit by the Foot, and you're going to sing that, and you're going to hold that, and we're just going to, pot it down, add the thing that we're going to say, and then we're going to pot it back up, and and when you get to the end, we'll cut it off.
Nice.
Well, the listeners want to hear it now.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they do. I think I can play it back for you if you'd like.
Or you can just do it live. Yeah, as long as we don't have to pay you.
Oh yeah, you don't have to pay me. All right. So here's what it sounded like. It was, you hear the sound of people shifting around like an orchestra tuning up. Somebody steps up to the podium, clears their throat, says, "Fruit by the
Like the Energizer Bunny.
Strong work there.
Yeah.
So the singing thing, I like to say, whatever skills you have, you should tell people you can do that. Even if that is not if you don't get booked to sing things or that sort of thing, you may have a connection with the kind of copy that they want you to tell. So it's good for them to know, I have an IT background. I don't have a problem with, complex copy like that. And I also sing. So if you need me to sing something for you, I can. The poetry, Bobby, that you mentioned, I have done a fair amount of commercials that are looking for that kind of lyrical, poetic read. And I find it, for me, the challenge is to make poems seem conversational. It actually helps with that, so that I can take something that isn't written, structured like a conversation, and make it into one for the purposes of that moment. And so I think it helps me. It helps me from a practice perspective, and it just kind of, in these days and the way things are happening these days, it just helps me give me something else to get some of my feelings out.
This is a perfect segue. It is time, George, for the Cold Read Challenge.
Cold Read Challenge.
I am going... I am sending you an email right now. Don't read the body of the email. Whenever you get the email, though, pull it up and read the direction out loud, please, and then dive into the VO copy.
Okay.
Let me know when you get it, if you would.
All right, there it is. Okay, the direction says, "This is a poem about discovering love. Our protagonist has been longing to find his one and only true love and thinks this may be the one. The VO should be thoughtful, sincere, and sweet with a sense of yearning." That's funny.
Go, read.
All right. I was working part-time in a 5 and dime. My boss was Mr. McGee. He told me several times that he didn't like my kind because I was a bit too leisurely. Seems that I was busy doing something close to nothing, but, different than the day before. That's when I saw her. Ooh, I saw her. She walked in through the outdoor. She wore a raspberry beret. The kind you find in the secondhand store. Raspberry beret. And if it was warm, she wouldn't wear much more. Raspberry beret. I think I love her.
Good stuff, man. Oh, I love it. That was perfect.
Oh, man.
That was perfect.
That is hilarious.
Now, Bobby, did you have a redirect on that? Did you want to have him do it like slam poetry style? Is that a thing that you could do with that copy?
Let me see. All right.
Yeah, that's such a trend. What was her name? Gabby? That was at the Biden.
Yes. Yeah. It was Amanda.
Amanda.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. So Amanda Gorman.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. So I was working part-time in a 5 and dime. My boss was Mr. McGee. He told me several times that he didn't like my kind because I was a bit too leisurely. Seems that I was busy doing something close to nothing but different than the day before, and that's when I saw her. Ooh, I saw her. She walked in through the outdoor. She wore a raspberry beret. The kind you find in a secondhand store, raspberry beret. And if it was warm, she wouldn't wear much more. Raspberry beret. I think I love her.
Oh, I love it. I like that one too.
I'm flexible.
Yeah. You're directable.
And that's why you're getting all the bookings.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
That's right. I'm directable. I'm very directable. Thank you.
George, you taught at the Broadcast Center in Charlotte. I know when I came to visit you that one time, came to Charlotte to visit. If you had to look back on what you were teaching kids about VO then as compared to now, would there be any differences?
A penny for your thoughts.
Matter of fact, I still only teach that class. I've backed away from my huge involvement at the school, and I teach voiceover still. And I tell them that, one, my biggest thing for talking to people about voiceover is, as you guys all know this, the perfect voice does not matter. Your great voice isn't going to make the difference. It's how you inhabit the character.
George?
No, Kevin, it does not. Because you and I both know that announcer sound is not what sells.
That's
most
right.
of the time, right? Right? And I tell them that if you really are interested in this, you must get coached. You must understand that what you are trying to do is not just read the copy, but put yourself in that moment. You've got to exist in the moment of that copy so that you are really a part of it instead of you just looking at it and making something come out that matches what's written. So what I've said to them hasn't changed dramatically. I've added a little more depth to what I'm telling them and how to do it. But for the most part, a lot of that stays the same. There, as you guys both know, there are different trends in how voicing is done and what things are hot and what aren't. One thing that has changed in the last handful of years is the diversity of casting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
About time.
It is about time.
Yeah.
And it's happening with women, people of color, trans and non-binary voices, it is starting to do what we always thought it should do, and that's not just represent the people who are listening, but speak to the people out there who will listen to those voices. And that has become, just a nice thing to see in a time where there are a lot of bad things going on. It's nice to see this happening that kind of picks up the pace and makes things a little more inclusive across the board. Mostly I'm telling him, you got to practice. If this is what you want, you got to practice. You got to learn. You got to be willing to go beyond what is just looking at the copy and saying those words with your nice voice, because Gary Owen isn't walking through that door.
That is
So
great
true.
advice, George. And beyond the coaching and getting that, practicing and that kind of stuff, what resources should we be using for those that are more established? What resources should we be using to our advantage to be more successful in VO?
Well, beyond coaching, a lot of it means going and meeting people. And I know that's been a hard thing to do with COVID. I have a very direct relationship with what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mm-hmm. But we need to know each other. We need to meet other people. It means that you're going to find out how somebody else does something, somebody else who has a similar problem and has come up with a different answer for how to solve it. It's somebody referring you for a job, not all the time, but every once in a while someone says, you know what, someone was looking for this kind of voice and I thought of you. And that development of community is so crucial for your career. Knowing other people, not just so that you can get jobs but so that you can help other people say, hey, I know somebody who can do this. And that helps not only your standing, as it were, among people in the community, but it helps you be a better person and a better voice actor just by saying, I can hear the difference. I know people who sound like that and can fill that need. And you will be better for it.
Excellent.
Amen.
Excellent, buddy. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been a real pleasure having you on. If folks wanted to reach out to you for voice work, or if they wanted some coaching from you, how should they reach you?
I am at george@voevolution.com, and my website is voevolution.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, George Washington III. Don't call him Junior. George, thanks so much, man. Been a real pleasure having you on today.
Thanks, George.
It is my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, the Middle Class VO podcast. Middle Class VO